again, I don't want to get too deep in the biology, but soy is inherently estrogenic, right?
So soy has phytoestrogens. They're not actual estrogens. They work in the body similar to a SERM, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator.
Charlie Kirk just got destroyed in a debate with a vegan, and he may have even deleted the video because of all the support the vegan was getting from his own fans in the comments. Let's quickly run through the debate because, man, Charlie was being slimy.
I believe that the breeding, exploitation, and killing of animals for food when we do not have to is immoral. And obviously,
did you lose a bet?
No. So again, I'm serious. I would ask for a fair chance at a debate without shooing me off the mic or making jokes, please.
Yeah, so big props to this vegan for standing his ground despite the audience being extremely dismissive and just laughing, along with, Charlie's consistent jokes. This is the dynamic for a lot of the debate, and the dude just continues to stand his ground.
What do you eat?
Like for protein?
Sure.
I eat tofu, nutritional yeast, seitan. I easily get over 200 grams of protein per day.
It's a lot of tofu to get 200 grams of protein.
So the dude mentions multiple high-protein vegan sources of food, and Charlie goes, well, that's a lot of tofu you'd have to be eating to get 200 grams of protein. Brother, he said foods that also weren't tofu?
I eat tofu, nutritional yeast, seitan.
Amazing job, Charlie.
What moral, we don't want to see animal cruelty, but what moral worth would you say a cow has?
I would say that a cow has worth in the sense that we should not, like any sentient animal, cause them suffering or kill them if we do not have to.
You know that there would actually be fewer cows if we didn't eat them?
I'm aware, yes.
Yes, Charlie. If we stopped breeding, exploiting, and killing cows, there would be less cows. And guess what? In this process, there would also be less cows being abused and exploited and having their rights violated. This is a good thing. Someone can just as easily be running a dog farm or a human farm and say, well, if you stop my farm, there's going to be less dogs and humans. Yes, of course, and also less rights violations. Next.
What obligations do we have to wild animals?
So we have the classic bringing up of wild animals in an entirely different survival situation in a conversation geared towards someone like Charlie, who's in a developed country with an abundance of food at his disposal, therefore an ability to be a vegan. The vegan's trying to ask about people who have the ability to go vegan, and he brings up whether or not we should be intervening with nature. Notice he's not actually engaging with the vegan's main point here.
So I know this might seem unrelated, but I would hope to say you're also pro-life, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. So you are consistent. When vegans are not pro-life, that is
It appears Charlie has never heard of the pro-sentience position. You do not have to be pro-life to be a morally consistent vegan.
But you would agree, though, animals are not humans.
Yes.
Mind-blowing rebuttals from Charlie here. Thank God the vegan knows that humans and non-human animals are distinct.
I just want to understand, by what moral framework do you say it is immoral to eat the meat of something that is not human, especially if we get nutrients and we human beings are able to flourish?
Well, I would say, why are you against animal cruelty?
Well, first of all, no one wants to see something suffer unnecessarily. But if and when you are able to derive calories, nutrients.
Okay, so according to Charlie, animal cruelty is wrong because nobody wants to see an animal suffer unnecessarily. Of course, animal products are completely unnecessary, so by Charlie Kirk's own moral standard, he is supporting unnecessary animal suffering by not being a vegan. Therefore, he's doing something wrong. But he gets out of this by saying...
And I would also contest one of the other things, that I do believe we need animal-based protein. In fact, I think one of the main reasons, and maybe you're able to work it out, that young men are seeing such a dramatic drop in testosterone rates is the removal of animal-based proteins from diets, so young men especially, ages 10, 11, and 12, and replacement of a lot of these counterfeit soy-based, plant-based proteins.
Do you see what he did there? He says, I believe that we need animal protein, but then he goes, oh, but maybe you're able to work it out. If we need animal protein, then this vegan should not be able to work it out. Being able to work it out shouldn't even be a possibility. Not to mention that he provides zero evidence that we need animal protein to survive, or evidence that these children eating soy burgers is the cause of testosterone being lower in men nowadays. In fact, we have this meta-analysis of clinical studies showing that neither soy nor isoflavone intake affects male reproductive hormones.
But again, I don't want to get too deep in the biology, but soy is inherently estrogenic, right?
So I would respond to this, but the vegan does a pretty good job responding to Charlie, so listen to what he says and then look what slimy thing Charlie does after.
So soy has phytoestrogens. They're not actual estrogens. They work in the body similar to a SERM, which is a selective estrogen receptor modulator. What that actually does, in some situations, that can actually lower estrogen in males if they have an estrogen imbalance. And
suppress testosterone production.
It does not suppress the testosterone production. Studies have found equal testosterone between meat eaters and vegans, considering calories and protein equal. In addition, many professional athletes
No, the consumption
are
of
vegan.
soy. The consumption of soy.
Yeah, I mean, most, in order to...
Let's get down to one last question, though, just from a very technical one. Wouldn't you agree that it is far more expensive to eat vegan than to eat animal-based protein?
So rather than stay on the topic of whether or not soy is estrogenic after being explained why it's not inherently estrogenic, he decides to pivot and say, let me ask a technical question. Isn't the vegan diet more expensive? And to answer that, a vegan diet can be cheaper or just as expensive as a non-vegan diet. It just depends how you formulate the diet. I personally save money as a vegan. And according to this modeling study coming out of the Lancet comparing the price of different diets, a vegan diet was cheaper. Now, here's the vegan's answer too.
You have to go
no,
out.
it's about the same. Like a pound of, like when I before I went vegan, I'd have like 93% ground beef for like lean protein. That'd be like, at Aldi it was like $6. So now I eat seitan, which most people don't know because it's I just eat meat. But it has in 400 calories it has 80 grams of protein and it's only $5. So I mean, it's not that expensive to eat vegan.
So, but let me just ask you one last question on this, because almost everything you consume has to be either manufactured or put together, where actually the way we're arguing to eat is far more of the earth and far more of whole foods. The vegans actually have to go out of their way to try and have different ingredients and compositions and oils that largely are far more human interference into the consumption of the food process, right? Which one is more of the earth, eating vegan or eating, let's just say, more paleo, not necessarily carnivore?
First of all, you don't need to consume vegan mock products to be a vegan. You can just stick to whole plant-based foods. Secondly, animals have been artificially bred to possess a significant more amount of meat on them and, produce an insane amount of eggs at a very unnatural rate. You can't sit here and act like a vegan diet is not natural and pretend like the animals you eat are. These animals are also the product of artificial insemination. Not to mention, it doesn't matter whether or not a diet is natural or unnatural when trying to determine if it's healthy. What matters is the health outcomes one gets when consuming the diet. And the research shows that if vegans plan their diet appropriately, they can be healthy, just like non-vegans, making Charlie's decision to pay for animal products unnecessary and therefore wrong by his own moral standard.
In terms of the food itself, I eat mostly pretty much just whole food vegan. Like sometimes I'll eat a vegan, like Impossible Burger. That's not necessarily healthy.
No, time out, hold on. That is like the most manufactured.
I know, that's not healthy.
Not even healthy. Now you're proving my point.
Notice the vegan says that he mostly consumes whole foods, but maybe sometimes has an Impossible Burger, and then Charlie just spazzes out. Relax, Charlie. He says that he barely consumes this stuff. Once again, you can obviously consume a whole food plant-based diet as a vegan. And then of course, Charlie insinuates that mock meats are unhealthy with zero evidence. Whether plant-based meat is healthier than animal-based meat will depend on which plant-based meat you're studying. They vary heavily. There are multiple studies showing that plant-based meats can be healthier depending on their formulation.
Like, let's just be clear. An Impossible Burger has like 50 ingredients that you cannot pronounce.
Yeah, and red meat also has a ton of ingredients that are hard to pronounce. Your literacy relative to the ingredients in the food you're consuming has zero bearing on the health outcomes the food will give you. Very emotional for somebody who prides themselves on being like a facts over feelings kind of person.
And it is made in like a lab.
Something also being made in a lab doesn't mean that it's bad for you. This is just the appeal to nature fallacy. Very logical and fact-driven, Charlie.
So, but either way,
and let me interrupt.
You can eat mostly whole
The fact
foods.
that we have to make Frankenfood, like Frankenstein food, is one of the greatest arguments that we should continue to eat real meat.
We don't have to. Once again, you don't need to consume mock products to be healthy. Secondly, again, look at what we've done to animals and animal agriculture. How is this not Frankenfood?